Welcome to the Real Estate Mailbag. I'm Angie Lawless, and I'm here with my co-host, Brandon Miller.
We are Wagon Wheel Title, a real estate title and escrow company here in Nashville. We have 9 attorneys currently, and our pledge is to the real estate professionals that we work with is that we will make you look like the stars that you are and provide your buyers and sellers with a first-class experience. On this podcast, we interview the best of the best in the real estate industry and bring real estate tips, tricks, stories, and news to anyone interested in real estate. We want to hear your questions going forward, and you can email us at mailbag@wagonwheeltitle.com.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick introduction of our panelists here. They were chosen for their commitment to leveraging their real estate knowledge to make a meaningful impact in the Hispanic community. Our guests bring valuable personal and professional experience and have unique insights and perspectives that we believe our listening audience will find both valuable and interesting. And before we do a rundown of their bios, I should just say that all 3 of these bios are extremely shortened. These ladies are exceptionally accomplished, so just know you're only getting a piece of it. Los Angeles native Eva Romero, a distinguished professional and community leader, holds a degree from California State University, Northridge. As dynamic broker-owner of Century One Capital Properties and co-owner of Solace Oral Surgery, Eva's career started as an educator focusing on business and leadership in inner-city high schools. Serving as NAHREP Nashville's founding president, Eva's commitment extends to various boards, including NAHREP National, NAHREP Midwest, American Red Cross, TLACC, and EYA, reflecting her dedication to service and philanthropy. And also, I should say that I've seen Eva do a keynote speech, and she is such an impressive speaker and has an incredible story that I encourage any of you guys to listen to. It will both humble you and inspire you.
Thank you.
All right, our second panelist is Debra Beagle. There's a lot of acronyms in her long bio, so we're going to do a shortened version, but also really impressive background. So, Debra is the CRS, and she's the CEO, managing broker, and owner of the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage here in Nashville, Tennessee, which is the #1 RE/MAX team globally and the official real estate team of NHL's Nashville Predators, which I think are going to have a good season this year.
We're crossing fingers. We had Hispanic Heritage Night last night, so but we did not win. But we're hopeful.
It's an exciting team, though, right now. So Debra is a national speaker and coach on business strategies, recruiting, and growth and operational excellence. She was recently elected as the first vice president of the Residential Real Estate Council, the RRC, for 2025, and will serve as the national RRC president in 2027. I guess that's when the term will start. 2024, Debra was recognized by NAHREP as the top U.S. Latino business owner and has been recognized by the Nashville Business Journal as one of Nashville's top female CEOs, executives, and women of influence. Debra is also a multi-million-dollar agent, overseeing 190 agents, a staff of 42, and over 14,000 plus transactions exceeding $6 billion in sales. So we've had the chance to work on a project with Debra, and it was truly amazing and would not have been possible.
Back in the day. 10 years ago, to be exact. 2014.
No.
Yes, 10 years. Yes.
Whoa, that makes me want to vomit, kind of. I will say that, Debra is the only person I know who has 2 personal assistants and was still sending me her bio at like 2 a.m. So if anybody else is a personal assistant out there, I feel like she could probably use another one. And Brandon picked who he was going to read on this and told me the others. And he picked Debra Beagle. And I know from Babbel that you're supposed to always roll your R's, and I can't roll my R. So now I've got to say Giovanna Murillo, and I can't do it exactly right. But anyway, just forgive my lack of being able to roll my R's. But okay, so Giovanna Murillo serves a diverse international clientele, fluent in both Spanish and English. And I think actually all you guys are both fluent, bilingual in Spanish and English. Clearly I am not. But okay, so Giovanna is fluent in both Spanish and English. She's become a trusted expert in Nashville's luxury and multifamily real estate market, helping clients from all over the world make smart investments in the city she's called home for over 25 years. A graduate of Lipscomb University with a degree in corporate management, Giovanna also holds a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification, reflecting her commitment to operational excellence. In 2023, she took on the role of president of NAHREP Nashville, where she led initiatives to raise standards within the real estate industry and the professionals serving the Hispanic market. So welcome, you guys. We're so glad that you took the time to be here, and we're excited to learn a little bit more about, why we should care about the Hispanic community and what that brings to our overall real estate community.
Okay.
Brandon, do the always entertaining market minute of numbers.
Our next little segment here we call the market minute, just kind of a quick snapshot of kind of what's happening in the real estate market locally. Home sales in September of 24, there were 2,810 closings. Were essentially flat. They're basically up 0.1% over the same period last year. For the third quarter as a whole in 24 compared to last year, sales were basically also flat. They were up 0.5%. So essentially flat. Home prices were very steady. They were slightly down. Single family home pricing, $467 versus $468 a year ago. Condo prices, however, were slightly up, $356 on average versus $344,995 at this time last year. The big story in the real estate market continues to be interest rates, I think, as all of our panelists can agree. After rates dipped below 6% for most mortgages in mid to late September, we got a hotter than expected inflation report a couple weeks ago, and then a much stronger than anticipated jobs report. While a great jobs report is generally considered good news, it's not great for interest rates. So we've seen rates head up a little bit, and we're kind of in that low sixes to mid sixes as we sit here today on October 16th, 2024.
So for each of you, can you explain how you came to work in real estate, and then, specifically how did you start working with the Hispanic community, or have you sort of found your way to that niche? Tell us about it.
I'll start. Debra?
Okay. Well, my mother came from Cuba, and when she was 16, and they owned homes in Cuba, had businesses, and when communism came in, they took their homes, they took their businesses, and they came to the U.S. with nothing. I sit here today, and my mom, my whole side of my family, our wealth came through home ownership. It was like the most amazing time when I remember as a little girl when we got our first home. And, as I went to college, I ended up in commercial real estate. I was doing environmental consultant. And then my mother said, you really need to do residential and get into residential. And we were just starting to have kids. And I felt I had a calling to it and to provide opportunity for home ownership to everyone, and specifically the Hispanic community, because of my path.
That's awesome. How about you, Giovanna?
For me, I think it was a bit of a natural draw. I had pursued real estate back in 2003. I had gone to do the pre-licensing. I had done my testing. I had interviewed with brokerages, and then I took that job interview that I couldn't turn down. So fast forward 16 years later, I'm sitting in my corner office in this corporate world that I work in, and the next step for me is VP, and I'm looking around, and not to demean, my VP at the time, but I saw her day in and day out, and I said, there has to be something else out there for me. It just felt like I wasn't doing enough, and like I wasn't maximizing my potential. And so I gave a 30-day notice without having anything lined up, because that's the type of person that I am. I have to be fully disconnected in order to know what's next, right? Because I'm all in. And then I've always had a fascination for real estate. I love looking at real estate, right? I still do, but I loved looking at real estate, at houses when I wasn't looking, at architecture. I always had a fascination for it. And so I thought, well, I'm bilingual. Where I worked, I was one of 7 Hispanics, so not majority by any means. When I first started working there, we were 57 employees. I was the only Latino. And when I left that company 9 years later as a director of client relations, we had over 2,000 employees and we had only 7 Latinos. So I was living in this corporate bubble thinking that there weren't any Hispanic bilingual professionals in real estate to serve the community. So I was leaving corporate thinking I'm going to show up and I'm going to, be the savior. So anyways, fast forward, I was introduced to NAHREP, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. And I was introduced into a new passion of real estate. And I thought, okay, I am not equipped to serve the Hispanic community in the way that I should. And so I'm going to gather all of the knowledge and resources. And that's how I started working with the Hispanic community.
I love that. I particularly love that you just quit your job. And it isn't like we all have different skill sets, right? So some people are meant to work in those, management positions, but some of us are not. And so it takes all kinds. So I love that.
So my experience was a little different. I was that person in a little Latino girl in LA thinking college was the only way to get out of poverty, and I did it. And I still am a supporter of college. Obviously, I taught high school, and I just saw around me people that had college degrees seemed to be what better than I was at that time. But kind of real estate fell on my lap. College educated, living in LA, single mom, struggling as a teacher, and this is not what I was taught. So at the time, a real estate broker, I had going through a huge transition in my life, and I was selling my condo in LA. And he says, Eva, he met me, and he was a top Latino agent in the San Fernando Valley. He says, I need a buyer's agent. You need to come on my team. I said, what? I'm in education. Absolutely not. Get away from me. I'm not into business. I can barely talk to my high school students. This is a safe place for me. He says, no. The interesting part for me is I didn't understand the power of real estate. I owned a house because it just kind of happened. Somebody said, you should buy your condo. But I didn't understand the power of real estate. I had an experience with a lady, my first transaction with a little lady from Costa Rica. And I remember when I gave her keys, and I was doing real estate part-time. I was still teaching full-time, doing real estate part-time. And I remember her in tears, crying with gratitude, just that experience. And I go, oh my gosh, I'm actually helping people. It's not, but I still didn't understand the power of real estate and building wealth, which is super important that I think we'll discuss because, we all want our own, but I didn't understand the power of building wealth through real estate. When I understood that, that's what's kept me in the business. And that's what, just organically through NAHREP, when I came to Tennessee, Hispanics are a majority in California. So just coming to Tennessee, I'm like, okay, I'm going to move to Tennessee. And I'm just looking around and I'm like, where are the Hispanic families at? It's kind of an interesting culture shock for me. This is only 10 years ago. So it was kind of interesting to feel that way. And just organically when we launched NAHREP in 2016 with some amazing, Debra was actually on the founding member. Now she was a chapter president. In 10 years, you have seen a massive growth. So that's why we're here.
And Giovanna, you're from California too, right?
I actually was born in Mexico, but I went to California when I was 5 years old. So I grew up in California. Now I say that I grew old in Nashville, but Nashville is home now.
I remember we had a discussion and you had sort of a similar kind of like culture shock when you moved here. So lots of changes, which is great, I think. But,
Okay, so our next section here we call Breaking Ground, and this is kind of where we bring some recent real estate news and get panelist reactions to some of the kind of hot headline stories in the news.
We put this in your all seats, but the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, which is, we've been saying NAHREP, but for those listening who may not know, NAHREP and the Hispanic Wealth Project released the 2024 2024 State of Hispanic Wealth Report. And as part of that, there's this short section called Dispelling Myths Surrounding Hispanic Household Wealth. And so just wanted to ask you guys kind of, what were your main takeaways when you were reading these myths, and what do you think really stands out that you want people to know?
For me, one of the things that I like to point out is that this report is not something that just NAHREP puts together out of people that they interview, but it's from very reliable sources, such as the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, for example, that's referenced in this top stat here. And one of the things that really stood out to me is that there is a misconception that Hispanic families only purchase in low-income census tracts. And in 2023, just in 2023, over 71%, which is the majority of finance home purchases by Hispanic consumers, was in medium to high income census tracts, with only 4% being in low income census tracts. So when you're thinking of, do I need to serve the Hispanic community? Absolutely. You absolutely need to serve the Hispanic community, or else your business will not be set to succeed. You want to be prepared, you want to have the resources, and you want to do this now before it's too late.
Do you have any sense of why we have that perception? Or, I don't know, I mean, it's a wide gap, right, in the perception to the reality.
I think one of the perceptions is that Hispanic consumers are not integrated into the financial system, that they don't pay taxes, all misconceptions. In fact, there's a lot of taxes that are paid, including Social Security, that are never retrieved because, yes, there are undocumented Hispanic consumers as well. But I think that might be one of the misconceptions, is that Hispanics tend to be looked at as the majority of the labor workforce and therefore think that affordability is low, when in reality, Hispanics tend to know how to save. And they save a lot of money, a lot of cash, and a lot of these purchases are made with cash.
The other thing I'd like to add too, I mean, you look at across the U.S., there's 9.5 million Hispanic households that own homes in the U.S. Tennessee, and even we were just talking about just 10 years ago when we met and she came to Tennessee, our Hispanic population growth has gone through the roof. And you look at 2023, we were number 1 in Hispanic homeownership growth at 49.5%. I mean, it's a huge increase for us. So I think, and there are a lot of Hispanic business owners that we just aren't recognizing as much out in the media and the public, but it's a huge force. We have NAHREP at the national level. We have now what's called Latitude. Our Hispanic real estate organization has now expanded into across all industries in promoting Hispanic business owners, and it's called Latitude, which you guys, I was not able to go this year, but the average age of Hispanics in the U.S. is 30, and it's a growing population and Tennessee is so attractive to business owners. That's where I feel is the growth is coming in with Hispanic-owned businesses, and that's where we're seeing it, which is very impactful. And it goes to what Giovanna was saying, that they're purchasing in higher power. With higher power, purchase power.
I guess if they're saving a bunch too, then it would also stand to reason that their generational wealth is growing quicker to bring them up faster. Yeah. How about you, Eva?
Well, I think these ladies just hit everything, but I think it's super important to note, like Debra said, that the Latino community here in Tennessee is very young. And Tennessee is actually the third top, I think it's third. The youngest Hispanic community of young Latinos is the average age is 28. What does that mean? That means that these young people are starting careers. They're going to buy homes. So Tennessee is actually on the map right now with Latino growth, which makes, I just said I got here at the right time. This is my path, But it's important that we know as business owners, and Debra, we talked about small business. Small business drives our economy. Hispanic-owned businesses are growing in Tennessee. I work with a lot of them day on, day out. Why does this matter? Why? It matters because if you want to grow your business in real estate, in construction, in development, and I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, you should be focusing on this demographic. By 2040, and there's data points that we talk about, Hispanics are going to be the majority in Davidson County. That's huge. That's something that really should matter for all of us, and it's not, and I think it's important. And this report is amazing. They just came out with it this year. They come out with a new report every year, and also the State of Homeownership report, which is another report that talks about how Hispanic homeownership is now at 49.8%, I think, 5 or 8%. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Do you guys know how that compares to like a Caucasian homeownership rate?
There's still a gap. I would say we are shrinking the gap, but there is. I mean, obviously, that's in Tennessee. We're not there yet. We can give you those data points. But like I said, Hispanics are the ones that keep growing in every capacity, in home ownership, in business ownership, and I have to say, Latinas are actually the fastest growing in small business.
Yes.
Overall.
Yeah.
In comparison to all.
And it's not just small business, it's employer firms. Businesses that employ multiple people. That is led by Latinas, and it is led by a drastic amount. It's over 32% compared to a 2.6 national growth of new businesses. So it's a drastic growth. One of the things that I think really stands out to me in terms of we don't have the data point how it compares to like the regular population, but there's one data point that I do like to reference is that from 2012 to 2022, Hispanic home purchases led the growth in just overall real estate purchases. That was by over 50%. The majority, over 50%, of household growth was led by Hispanics in a 10-year span.
That is awesome. Brandon, do that.
Okay. One thing I wanted to just mention too is I know talking about the Federal Reserve study of consumer finances. That's something we look at a lot. Just one of the things that I think we're talking about building wealth and kind of on Eva's point, like one of the most amazing stats in the last study was that the wealth gap between homeowners and renters is now 40x. Which is just, you can debate causality, and there's people that make TikTok videos saying you're better off renting, but the data is just mind-blowing in terms of the differential impact of owning versus not. And so that's a huge area, for focus because it really moves the needle.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, because again, across the country and just my personal experience and my family's, the path to wealth building is through, I 100% believe, is through home ownership. But you have to have access to credit, and that's huge. And that was where my family was very fortunate to be able to have access and providing that access. Right now, we have some great opportunities for Hispanics, for us to provide the path to home ownership. They just have to know and believe that they're not stuck just renting. We have programs available here in Davidson County. I know Wilson Bank has 100% financing, and I think it's up to $450,000 in we have some developments out in West Nashville that if you're Hispanic, that you can have access to this credit. They just need to know about the programs. And that's what we're up here helping showcase, that you can be a successful realtor, own a successful business, multiple businesses, in Eva's case, develop properties and purchase homes, believing it, knowing it, and how do you get access to it? And that's what we're here to help everyone know, that it's available, and we can make it happen.
To your point, I think it's important to note that you have to continue to educate your clients and educate the consumer, because I would say that we understand if real estate is the cornerstone of wealth, creation, right? But a lot of our communities, they just want a home to call their own. They come to this country, opportunity. I talk to them all the time. Some of them, they just want a home. I don't want to have to rent. It's more about the sense of community. They don't really always think about the generational wealth piece. So I think it's important to note that it's important to continue to educate in that piece. I mean, I was college educated and didn't understand that. So that's just, to me, mind-blowing. I'm not saying, I went to a decent college, but why didn't they teach financial literacy? Why were they teaching me how to build wealth?
And I think that's true for most, high schools,
Yeah.
whether it's public, private, and, even if you're an economics major in college, you typically don't learn anything practical.
Well, and I want to get into some of that, loan, some of the financing piece in a little bit. However, I think that's another thing that is really important that you just highlight is knowing, keeping yourself educated, right? Because these are obviously, as the population expands, as the home ownership rate goes up, I would assume that there will be more banking programs and more affordability options out there to help people. But staying educated is important. No. Yep.
Okay, our next segment here is called Path to Profits, and this is where our panelists share some of their tips and stories of success so that you can elevate your real estate game as well. So kind of start off, and we've talked about this a little bit, but what are right now some of the main reasons a real estate professional, maybe especially somebody who's just gotten their license, might shift and decide, I'm really going to focus on the Hispanic community here in Middle Tennessee?
We've already covered a lot.
2040 majority in Davidson County. That's big. That's big. If you're not servicing, I always like to say the story. When I came to Tennessee, and I think the ladies know this, we were launching NAHREP, and I was trying to educate people on the importance of our community. And somebody came to me, Eva, I don't really work with Latinos, and they only make like less than 10% of my business. So they really didn't see the value of NAHREP. And I said, well, are you looking at the rest of the United States? Because how much do you want to grow your business, right? If you're not tapping and understanding that this is where we're headed, then you're just gonna, and I think Giovanna said a couple of things while we were having coffee about even businesses. Your businesses should reflect the community you live in, So it's important. It's super important.
I mean, it's a little bit like if you're monitoring your KPIs, like we might say in business, this is a very strong one showing you where it's headed and something to watch. So I love that.
Yeah. I agree. I think, KPI is definitely something to be on the lookout for. You don't want to stay behind. You want to be prepared. You want to have the resources, and you want to be educated and empowered to help the community. One, it's not an act of charity. Helping the Hispanic community is a business decision, and it's a high income decision, actually. So some of our higher performers in the area serve the Hispanic community. And one thing about Hispanics is that we are loyal. We are loyal purchasers. We build relationships with our agents, with our title companies, and we do not like to move. We like the relationships. We like to move homes, but we don't like to move with the partners that we built relationships with. And so that's something that you can count on. I have multiple clients that I serve that, they came to me for their first home purchase. They're on their fifth, sixth, and everybody's thinking investment properties now. I need to grow my investment portfolio. So it's educating is important, because you show them the path. And I truly believe that home ownership is a human right. You work, therefore you should be allowed to own your home. And if you're allowed to own your home, you should be able to own multiple homes and build your wealth through real estate.
Yeah, and truly, I mean, a lot of Hispanic business owners, and I have several clients, and that's something that we've worked on too, is investment in rental properties, because that's a great, solid retirement plan. If you're cash flowing on your investment rental properties, you start acquiring them when you're younger, and by the time you hit your late 60s, you've got retirement income coming in every month. So
A really great annuity with extra tax benefits.
Right. That is absolutely right. And again, it goes back to education and showing the path. And I start too with some of my younger clients buying their first property as their owner occupied property. And then they turn that into a rental and then go buy another owner occupied property. So they're utilizing their ability to purchase themselves and then start acquiring property, which a lot of people don't know how to make that happen and how to do that. But our market is very conducive to that, because if you get a lease on that property that you're in, then you free up the ability to go buy your next owner occupied property.
Absolutely. I mean, Brandon and I started our business by, buying a condo and then, basically selling it. I mean, we could have just kept it and rented it, but in this case, we ended up, we needed the cash out quickly, and we, and so we pulled that. Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. And so we, sold that, and then we had enough money to go buy, our first office, which we felt was key to stabilizing part of our operating expenses, being the rent, because the market, obviously is like continue to climb. But
It also took away the backup plan if you buy the office. There's no backup plan.
We survived. High five. Yeah. Oh, touch and go there for a little bit. But okay, so I think in a lot of ways you don't need specific knowledge likely to represent the Hispanic community in real estate. But if there are agents who are listening, I mean, there are some specific things to this community that might be worthwhile to discuss. Can you guys weigh in on some of that?
I know it's multi-generational. So it's important to note that because in Tennessee specifically, it's a young community, I've had families come. I've had up to 8-10 people in my conference room for a buyer consultation. It's a family decision sometimes, because you do have the grandma living in the home, or and you still have, even though you still have those young kids translating for their parents in some cases. So understanding that it is a multi-generational it's a big decision. So having knowledge of that. Don't be surprised if they invite you to a birthday party once they get to know you right away, because they like Giovanna said, they really, really trust. But once they trust you, they're lifetime clients.
Yeah, they absolutely adopt you as part of their family. So it's wonderful to work with that type of clientele that you feel there's some mutual trust, and you become part of their hopes and their dreams, and you work towards that. And I think that the professionals that serve as a Hispanic community are not in it necessarily, for it as a business only, but they have a heart to help the Hispanic community achieve those dreams, because we see the potential, we see that there are things that are important. I would say that 1 out of every 4 Hispanic purchases are done majority in Spanish, so that's one big difference. Even if they do speak English, they tend to want to speak Spanish when it comes to the purchase. They because that's usually their native language, and they feel most comfortable in it, to transact in it. So it's important to be surrounded with the professionals and the resources that can help the Hispanic community in their language. The other is to know the different, as Debra was saying, the different loan programs and opportunities. I had a client referred to me that was fully pre-approved. I had an FHA pre-approval, and I started showing houses. And as I was having this conversation with the client, I realized that, wait, the documentation that you have should not allow you to have this type of loan. So therefore, if we go under contract, your loan is going to fall through. Had I not known the different types of loan programs and the documents that are required, then I would have gone all the way through with this client. They would have had big hopes and big dreams, and they would have been shattered. But instead, I was able to, in the very beginning, in that first consultation showing, because we did it all in one day, I was able to identify that and then bring them back on track and get them with the right people, with the right resources, so they could be truly pre-approved.
Just kind of following up on that, I think that is a huge value that you all add, is especially being like people don't know a lot about financing. Like everybody just thinks, well, this is a bank, they do loans, they're similar, but there is tremendous variation in loan types. Like, same thing, if we have a condo project and there's a hotel there and somebody's getting a Fannie Freddie loan, we know that's not going to work. It's going to get denied because it's not a warrantable building. Same thing, your clientele, their unique situations, what products are going to work, and just having those relationships, which you're talking about, that's huge. Again, we work a lot with Wilson Bank. That's a great product they have for specific situations, but that is critical knowledge that you really bring that is invaluable.
Well, and we talked about it a little bit when we were having breakfast coffee prior to this, that it is a labor of love, because you're doing it for sort of the long-term relationship, because you may have to take on extra responsibilities. I think you guys have mentioned that you're doing a lot more of the heavy lifting in terms of, like we've already discussed here, but even in terms of like helping understand the lending process or the insurance process. So it does sound like it's something where you don't just kind of go in for the money and step out, or kind of take like a deal here or there, much like Brandon and I think when we see people and they do, they partner with someone in commercial to get some commission, but they're willing to hand it over. We're always really impressed by that, because it can be very similar. It also can be a very different beast that can get uncomfortable quickly. And so this sounds a little bit the same.
And tell us a little about, within, some of the specific things that may differ, when sort of you're looking for, maybe say working with a Hispanic family versus maybe a young professional who's single that's just kind of moving to Nashville. Like, what are some of the differences? I know we've talked a little bit about, entertainment spaces, yards. Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you see kind of out in your role that may be a little bit different that from maybe a typical buyer in Nashville.
Well, there are also single Hispanic professionals, so I don't want to leave that, but I guess as compared to the general population, what are some things that might look different with respect to the actual physical property itself?
Oh, well, and I'll touch on it because Eva had mentioned multi-generational, mi abuelita vivía con nosotros, or she lived with us until I was 13 and she passed away. But we have very, very strong family ties, and we our parents stay with us, our cousins stay with us, so we love to be around family. So having enough space is important, and we do. For us, we always had a lot of family meals and celebrated together on a weekly basis. So we had to have space for getting together. So that was important to us.
So big kitchens.
Big kitchens.
Big kitchens, big yards to have family over. I know a lot of my families don't want to buy a property if there's an HOA, particularly because they don't really want too many restrictions. The whole point of home ownership to them, it's well, I don't want anybody telling me what I can and cannot do. Not that it's going to be, it's just things like that sometimes they need. But I will say that they're looking the Century 21 just came up with their home buyer report, and one of the things that 89% of Hispanic families is looking for community. One of the things they search is for community. The Hispanic home buyer is searching for opportunity and community. So they will drive, and I know they will drive if they know that there's an opportunity. If they can buy a home, they're willing to commute. They're willing to do all the things because of that opportunity and that sense of community that they seek.
Just in case this does get released before November 5th, another reason for promoting the transit plan. So if anybody is listening, vote all the way down your ballot. And just remember that, public transit does really affect not just low income, but people who are making the choice to buy a much larger house in a neighborhood that is just farther out for the opportunity. Anything else that you guys can think of in terms of the physical that might be different?
I think driveways. Driveways are important because it's usually multi-generational. It means multiple vehicles. And so driveways are important. Gathering spaces, I have to agree with that. Whether it's a big kitchen or a big backyard, but a place for me to bring my family over. And even if I have the younger professionals living in the city, there has to be a big house somewhere in the family where we can all gather once a week. So somebody in the family has to have the big yard and the big kitchen to gather. And if that's covered, maybe I'll move into a condo downtown.
It feels like, just listening, it's like, this is a segment of the population that has their priorities in line. When you listen to it, I think like, man, I wish I had more family in my house and more family gatherings and less sitting on the couch in front of the computer. But
I'll point out something for Hispanics, for parties, we have a start time. We don't have an end time.
It's true.
Another reason that the HOA is not
correct.
Not aligned. And by the way, I do not like HOAs either, so I don't think that is a particularly Hispanic thing.
Yeah. Okay, so we've touched on this a little bit, but tell us a little bit about some of the things you have seen in terms of, some of the additional barriers that you may face or your clients may face, as being part of the Hispanic community. We talked a little bit about lending, some of the differences in lending. What are some other things, and maybe even talk a little bit about some of the nuances in lending that you have seen? I'm sure you have had that client who thought they were going to get this kind of loan, didn't work out, but just kind of tell us, what are some of those additional barriers that you, in your role as a realtor, have to overcome?
I think one of the things that's super important is the narrative. The narrative, and Giovanna, we've touched a little bit about. Serving the Hispanic community shouldn't be about, well, let me go help this community because it's not a charity, it's a business decision, right? Hispanics have money. They don't always have access to the capital. They don't always have access to the best education, but they have money. And I think it's important to note that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, it just like, where do you have the money in your house? Like, is that how much money you have in your house? Like, okay. So it's like things like that I think there's just, especially I will say, when I moved to Tennessee, and I always like to say this because it's important, I grew up seeing a lot of professionals in California that were not all construction workers and all. And when I moved to Tennessee, I felt like a lot of people just feel like Hispanics only do construction. Or only do this, or only that's incorrect. There's a lot of professionals that are here. My husband 10 years ago was the first oral surgeon Latino in Nashville, and I was like, why? Like what? Like kind of like that, And you'll see so many medical professionals now, so many nurses, so many other, even athletes. It's just a growing community. So I think that needs to change. We're not all first generational. There's some that are it's obviously becoming we're growing here. So I think it's important to note that it is changing.
Yeah, and even in the construction sector, we've moved away from the Hispanic community being only the construction workers, but now the company owners and the contractors and the architects. and the builders. So
Developers.
yep.
Yeah, and I would say
The
Zio,
entrepreneur spirit is, and that's where my mom, my whole side of the family, they started, and starting businesses, and that's where, like Eva said, I mean, they're wealthy. There is money there.
And also, we really see that in our business too. We've seen that change. Some of our clients, 15, 20 years ago, they were working for a plumbing company or an HVAC company, and now they own it. And now they are becoming, some of our clients have become banks for their employees. And so they are doing the loans for some of their employees who maybe do have a harder time, or they're looking at a higher interest rate, or they don't have as much down payment assistance program. So there are some things that are more difficult. And I think even for us, one of the, we try to be very much driven by like, what is our market and what is our client, what is happening. And so we've really realized we've gained a lot more Hispanic speaking clients. So we're realizing we have to adapt to that too. And so we're trying to do things to, help that, segment of our clientele.
Yeah, and I guess, when I think about an entrepreneur, I think about somebody who's willing to jump off and take a leap. And when I think about folks who've immigrated here, whether it was, this generation or 2 generations or 4 generations back, that's a lot, right? That is a big risk. And so I think in lots of ways that makes sense. When you talk about, keeping their money and where are there impediments to, I'm ignorant, here, but are there impediments to opening bank accounts, or what are the impediments that you see to getting loans when they aren't specifically, addressing like the Hispanic community, or maybe the flip side of that, the programs that do specifically address the Hispanic community, how are those different?
Well, most of these programs are not government backed, so no Fannie and Freddie there to back the loan, which means that the majority of these programs have a high cost of entry, typically 20% down, and a much higher interest rate. And so when you're thinking of the Hispanic community and you're thinking about affordability, that definitely has an impact. And so even with those stats, we're still seeing the growth. Even with that limitation, we're still seeing the growth. And that goes to what you were saying. We're very entrepreneurial by nature, and we're willing to take those risks because we understand the value in real estate. And as we're out there as professionals educating our community is understanding the value and the opportunity that comes with owning real estate and being able to build your generational wealth.
Okay, so this is our last big question, but a mailbag question. Brandon, I'm going to let you read it.
Okay. Mailbag question. Okay. I'm fluent in Spanish, and I've often thought of placing a focus on the Hispanic community when it comes to my real estate practice. However, I'm concerned about not knowing all of the legal considerations present in working with someone who is from another country, or maybe from another country. Is that a valid concern? And if so, how can I go about making sure that I do not miss something big?
Well, in the U.S. right now, all of our forms are in English. The lending forms, everything is as far as what they're going to be signing. So translation is a challenge. Some of the bigger banks are doing some of the forms in Spanish to help explain and have them understand, but what they would sign is still in English. I think, in working with Hispanics, and I have on all of my marketing material, yo hablo español, and then they just appreciate the effort. So even if you're not Hispanic and you're wanting to work in the Hispanic area, it is more about the effort and having someone like your business owners. If you speak Spanish or don't speak Spanish, you have somebody at Wagon Wheel that you could pull in. The multi-generational, my grandmother that lived with us till I was 13 didn't speak English. I was a translator. I was a 2, and she's wheeling me around, and I'm translating in the neighborhood. So, and everybody loved her. But I think that's just making the effort to help explain and have everyone that is there, because usually it's more than just one, understand the documents. Now, we've had a huge change since August 17th, and I actually, as broker owner, I redid our buyer representation agreement and our listing agreement. So we have our own now for our brokerage. And my Hispanic agents that work with me as well, we've been talking about January 1, like creating our own documents in Spanish for us to use. And legally, I think it would still hand up for listing and purchase, so, or the listing agreement and buyer rep agreement. So that's something that we're looking at right now, because nobody said that we can't do it. It's just nobody's done it because, and you're an attorney, but you're both attorneys here.
Opportunity.
So, and we're faced with an opportunity right now, and I'm like, why can't we do it? It's a listing agreement and a buyer representation agreement. I feel that doing it and having it in Spanish, available in Spanish, is going to be important.
Changes, we're kind of in the Wild West a little bit. It's going to take a few years to figure out what we don't know, and there's no guidance on a lot of things. So it's going to be a lot of trial and error.
And I'd rather have people understand and try to accommodate that. So that's something that we're looking at doing literally over this next 2 months. So
another thing is to get involved with your local NAHREP chapter. It's your National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. And we have our president here in the room. And so it is important to get involved with this organization. Even if you don't speak Spanish, you don't have to be Hispanic to be part of the organization. It's important to get involved because it connects you to the resources and the information that you need to serve the Hispanic community. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of my Hispanic clientele is bilingual. So it's not necessarily a language barrier per se anymore. It's really a resource barrier. So you need to be connected to the people that have the resources and the education and the information to give you the knowledge to be prepared to succeed.
This is a call that I get about once a week lately. So a realtor calls and says, I've got a potential client who is not documented. Can he, she, they buy a house?
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. There's a lot of loan products out there. Once again, education, connecting. By the way, NAHREP has over 100 chapters throughout the U.S. Claudia is our president now currently. We have one here when we started. I think we have over, I don't know how many members we have now, maybe close to 200, maybe even more. These are professionals that understand some of the products that are out there. So if you don't know, I'm sure there'll be agents that you can refer business to, you can partner with, that are willing to help you. But yes, you can buy a home. ITN borrowers, especially, you don't have to have legal status to own a home. If you're paying taxes, you can probably buy a home. We just have to understand how these products work, and we have to understand the documentation involved. But I really, I love when other professionals, not just realtors, but with lenders, title companies like yourself, understand these products, because it makes all our jobs so much easier versus us being the lender, the title company, all the things, because that's kind of what we are, therapists for our clients, for everything to our clients. But I think it's important for everybody to be involved in the process and understand what's out there. And that's what NAHREP does. NAHREP is a network. It's a network of people that you can count on to help you services.
And Wagon Wheel is a partner in our network. And to highlight what you were saying, I know that Wagon Wheel is taking the extra step to have the resources available for our Hispanic buyers. And you have translators, you have Spanish-speaking attorneys. Thank you.
No, we're glad to do it. It's actually, we're excited about this new initiative because sometimes I think we've been doing it for a very long time now, and sometimes you want something that you can feel good about, and it's a little bit hard to, we feel good about our daily and how we take care of our clients, but having something, helping bring additional access to folks who are certainly capable and willing, who just don't have as much resources targeting them, I think it's a feel-good thing. And along those same lines, I just wanted to point out that what is amazing about all three of you, and as I've listened today, is that it's not, you guys want other agents to come in. You want people to succeed, to help the community so that everyone can rise up. And I think that sometimes that is not common. You know, it's sort of like, wait, I've got proprietary information. You cannot have it. And I just think that's sort of a testimony a little bit about what you've been talking about the communities that you serve, and also to you guys. And I am just incredibly impressed.
And kind of piggybacking off something Giovanna said, I mean, this is good business. It's a way to combine, I think, doing good and doing well at the same time. You know, it's not, it's not something, there's no charity involved. There can be a profit greed angle even, but I think this is an opportunity to really, this education is very, very important, and it can really move the needle and really help a lot of people. And I think that's something we love to see.
And so tell everybody, a little bit about how they can get in touch with each of you guys. And also, I would love it if you gave a little statement to, if there is, someone in the Hispanic community who has just shared this podcast, even though it's directed at agents, something that you might want to say to that community about, kind of inspirational to them about how that they can do this and they can build generational wealth in America. That would be awesome.
Well, my website, Century 21 Capital Properties, Inspired Eva, Instagram. I think it's important to just know it's possible. I tell my team, we don't only educate, we have to inspire our community. Because when you come to a country, I think of my mom when she came here, she wasn't from here. She never felt she was welcome until she became a citizen. And she grew up here pretty much. She was 15 when she got here. So I think it's important to just inspire our community of the possibilities, right? And continue to educate. That should never stop for us as professionals and for our clients.
So DebraBeagle.com is my website. Debra Beagle, Facebook and Instagram, 615-427-1520. And, I've seen it across Nashville and our whole area is, when Eva back 10 years ago said, let's start this, restart NAHREP here in Nashville, and to see the growth. And then last night, as a partner with the Nashville Predators and their commitment to the Hispanic community and Hispanic Heritage Night last night, I mean, it was 17,000 of us filled in there, and it was, I just got goosebumps again. I know, because it's we're here. We're number one in Hispanic homeownership growth, and the city's embracing us. The Preds organization is embracing us, and then we're here to educate and attending our NAHREP events. We have the educational events throughout the year, and again, like Giovanna said, the financing part that we have as well, the knowledge that we have to help everybody.
I'd like to add one thing. I think also know your power. Just like know your power. If the Hispanic community out of the U.S. were taken out of the U.S. and made into a country of its own, we'd be the 5th largest country in the world. That's the GDP power that we have. So know your power.
Yeah, that is wild. Please don't go. So as we wrap up, I would love, selfishly, any ideas for who to do this with next, or a topic on which to do this on, if you have any.
There's so much. I just think right now, I think the whole thing with representation is important. And maybe, I know Debra is like, she's been a friend and good mentor of mine. Anytime I have a question, I'm like, Debra, what are you doing? What do we do? Like, like always sharing information is important, but maybe talking about how that's going to impact our community as well, and how we can, because it really isn't going to impact all of us, but it's like you said, it's like the wild, wild west. Like, what are we doing? What can we do? Because there are a lot of agents that are kind of not sure what's going on.
I guess too, we'll wait and see if it gets approved officially in November, right?
When that money starts flowing next month, it's
What can we do now, I guess? Like,
No.
what are some things that we can implement?
yeah. I agree with Eva. And then I think investment. I think having a discussion on that and the different paths to investing your resources into home ownership or rental properties and so forth, and then buying outside of the country too. I bought in Mexico. I think you own, and that was a different process down there as well.
Yeah, I love that topic. I know my understanding is in Mexico, you can't technically own. You buy through a trust that's owned, but it's essentially functionally the same.
Yeah,
So
and we actually set up a Mexican corporation to do so there's two different paths. So I learned quite a bit going through the process, but yeah, and we go down there quite a bit. There's a direct flight from Nashville to Cancun. So, but yeah.
Development,
Yes,
the professionals
development.
that I mentioned are now the builders and the architects and the developers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, because we've talked about it. She has some land and property that we've talked about possibly developing. So,
Well, that is super helpful, and we really appreciate it. And so, guys, that is a wrap for us today. But thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Real Estate Mailbag. And just remember, submit any ideas for future episodes or mailbag questions to mailbag@wagonwheeltitle.com. Thanks for joining us.